Unless you've been living under a rock for the last 20 years, then you've probably heard of the slow movement, and it's everything from slow food to slow fashion. But one of the latest things to have the word slow tacked in front of it is knitting. So in part one of today's video, I'm going to be talking about how you and I can incorporate slow and the slow movement into hand spinning and knitting. If you're new here, my name's Becca and I'm a hand spinner, knitter and dyer, and you're very welcome to my local beach in West Wales. If you're an old friend, welcome back. Now, one of the things I like to do is show you where we're walking. That's when I say we, that's me and my dog. My partner's taking photographs of the sunset, so we're walking out on the beach and then we're going to go out to the inner light, as it's called. So I'm going to turn you around and show you where we are. Today we're on the beach at Fishguard Bay in Goodwick, and we have fantastic views that stretch all the way to Cardigan. The walk to the inner light is sort of a local tradition, and when you get to the end you must touch the blue door of the little lighthouse. Living by the coast means we have an ever-changing view. Some days it's wild and windy, other days it's sea mist. But today we've got the most glorious sunshine and a sunset that promises to be absolutely spectacular. There's something very special about winter sunshine, and walking on this beach and along the inner causeway takes full advantage of what Pembrokeshire has to offer. Most people only ever see it in the summer, but I love it in the winter. So I'm back home, and it's actually about 3 days later because it has done nothing but rain since I recorded that little clip down on the beach. And I'm really hoping the rain is going to stay off because I'm recording in the conservatory, which means that if it does rain, it will sound like it's monsoon season in here. I sort of have a couple of places where I can film. I can either film in here where the light's really good but the audio is not so great, or I can film in my little sort of alcove where I keep all my fibre art stuff, where the audio is really good but the light's awful. So I've gone for good light but not brilliant audio. And I think I'm going to invest in some microphones because I think it would be nice to have better audio. I'm delighted with the number of people that are following me and engaging in the comments, so I think I will be upgrading to some better audio as soon as I can. Okay, so what are we talking about today? Slow knitting, slow crafting. In modern times, the word slow really comes out of the slow food movement, which was started nearly 30 years ago in 1986 in Italy, and it was a response to a proposal to set up a McDonald's on the Spanish Steps in Rome. And so it was very much a campaign against fast food, but it sort of morphed into something else, and now we talk about slow living and slow fashion, and we think we know what we mean when we say slow. So what does slow crafting or slow knitting or slow spinning or any of those things, what does it mean? So I thought it'd be quite useful to just have a framework for that. And I kind of scouring the internet and thinking, now where did this slow knitting idea come from? Because it's generally somebody has written something and it slowly seeps into our consciousness. And it was in fact a book, and I have to write it down because I'm not familiar with this author. And there's a lady called Hannah Thiessen Howard, and she has written 2 books, and she has a very helpful website, and I think she teaches knitting, and she's a knitwear designer, or certainly a knitting pattern designer. And she has on her website her philosophy, and her philosophy for slow knitting, and excuse me, I'm actually going to have to put the specs on, is source carefully, produce thoughtfully, think environmentally, experiment fearlessly, and explore openly. And I thought they were really good and a really good way to think about slow knitting. And so I challenge you to come up with your philosophy as a crafter, as a knitter, as a fibre artist, however you like to identify yourself. And I thought I would share my philosophy for my crafting. I'm always delighted to hear down in the comments or over on Instagram what people have come up with. I've had a lovely response when I sort of put it out in the world and said, come up with your word of the year. That's been really great, and it's been an absolute honour to hear people's words of the year, because it's a really personal thing, the way we create. So I'm honoured and humbled and delighted for those of you that shared your word of the year. So thank you for that. And also, while we're on the subject, people sharing comments, get some fantastic comments and really helpful comments. So if you're a new spinner and I've been talking about something on the, I think we're calling this a video podcast, I've been talking on video podcast, and people will comment below and they'll have really great tips on what works for them. So it's been fantastic that people actually leave those tips. They are definitely worth reading. Okay, so back to philosophy. So my philosophy has developed over time, as all philosophies do, and it is about creating something sustainable, or that is created sustainably. And for me, that's something that is going to biodegrade. That's really important to me. So I use natural fibres that I know are going to biodegrade. I mean, I started knitting with acrylic. I think quite a lot of us probably did. And acrylic kind of is around in the environment for about 200 years. So it takes about 200 years for acrylic to break down. And then it breaks down kind of into micro plastics, which then get into the environment and get into animals and our food. And so we're ingesting basically plastic, because acrylic is just plastic, which is come out of the oil industry. Now, recently I've been sort of wrestling with that idea as to whether I'm going to use commercial or synthetic dyes. I've done a lot of natural dyeing. It's something I've always been really interested in, but I do also use acid dyes because I can't always get the colours I want with natural dyes, and it's probably not because they don't exist, it's just my skill or the availability to me is just not there, so I've opted for going for acid dyes. Natural dye is also quite a kind of long-winded process, you know. You're scouring and you're extracting the dye, and then you're kind of dyeing it, and then you're mordants, you know, so it's quite an involved process. And actually acid dyes are not as involved. So I'm still a bit on the fence as to whether I'm just going to go, actually, no more acid dyes. I'm just going to stick with natural dyes. So I haven't actually come up with a definitive answer on that. I'm also wanting to create things that are wearable and usable. I'm very guilty of just spinning for the sake of it because I like doing it. And then I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with this? And there is value in that. I think there is value in that. And for my mental health, sometimes just to spin is really relaxing. So from a mental health point of view, it's really great. But sometimes I kind of pick up a skein and go, what am I going to do with this? So maybe I've got some ideas that maybe I'll do some charity knits or I'll donate it, and I'm working on that. So I think I'm going to come back to you maybe in a few weeks' time when I've finalised my thoughts on that. Then the other thing that I really like to do is I like to support my local community. And that doesn't just necessarily mean my kind of local community as in the area around where I live, although some of it is that, but my community is my fibre arts community. So I like to support independent businesses, I like to support female producers. I mean, there can be lots of different things, and my local community is probably going to be different from yours. And it really is not just about the geographical area. I mean, I'm somebody who is neurodivergent, so I quite often like to follow neurodivergent creators because I can relate to them. So, you know, there's no one right answer. And I think whenever we're doing this, we have to think about the fact that there is no one solution, there is no one right answer. We have to do what's right for us. So those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on slow knitting, slow crafting, slow living, and how you implement that in your creative practice. Now, the other thing I wanted to go on to was just talking about some of the things that I've been doing this week, because I actually haven't had a project. Sort of quite often I'll do a kind of blending, spinning, knitting project from one end to the other, and I really haven't done that this week. I've sort of been head in the computer, redesigning the website, which had all sorts of really kind of random things on it, and it has a lot less random things, and I've decided that it's going to basically be a bit of gardening, which is sort of growing natural dye plants mostly, and just fibre arts, and I'm going to keep it like that. I've also been thinking about actually having a specific shop for my print on demand, which is for fibre artists. So business cards, stickers, thank you cards, and they are going to be available on the platform Zazzle, which is a marketplace. I get a royalty if anybody buys any of my designs, and Zazzle ship, print, ship, do all the customer service. And they are, although they're an American company, they actually have printing depots all around the world. The one in Europe is in Ireland. There's one in Australia that sort of does Australia, New Zealand, sort of Pacific sort of rim area. And then I think they've got a hub in California, and I'm pretty sure they've got one in Arizona as well, in Nevada, maybe. Not sure. Somebody will know. I think they do. So the idea is that wherever you order from, it's printed locally to you. It's not as great as me actually producing it here and shipping it to people, but I do not have the capacity or the space to do that. So this is my solution. I could probably make a lot more money if I did my own printing and own shipping, but it's actually, sometimes it's not about the money, it's about your lifestyle and slow living, as we're talking about all things slow. So that's sort of what I've been doing. So this video is a bit late and maybe not as detailed as some of the other videos have been, but I'm going to sort of get on with what I have been doing. And I got the blending board out and I split it in 3, and I'll drop in a bit of footage that I recorded, and I just have been trying to get a graduated yarn that I'm happy with. And I knitted up a little sample. It's only a very little one. And I felt like I've really been doing quite a lot of spinning of sock yarn recently, and I enjoy knitting socks, so therefore, got to spin sock yarn. It's not my favourite spin, I have to say. I prefer something that's a little more kind of chunkier. And after my chain plying fail, I thought I have to sort this out, because I honestly thought I could chain ply. I was like, how come I can't chain ply anymore? So I did some chain plying and looked at the tips that had been left for me and for everybody in the comments below the video, and yeah, huge improvement. But the main problem was my drive band had actually stretched, so I wasn't getting enough take off. And I was sitting there thinking, I think maybe it's time I switched to double drive. And I was like, no, hang on a minute. This is just that it's stretched. It's not that there's anything particularly wrong with this. So as I use a polyband, I just kind of cut a bit out, stuck it back together, and fine, it's working. So all's good. And I'm glad I solved that problem, and in a few weeks' time I will try and do another chain plying video where I don't go horribly wrong, because I mean this worked really well, and I'm perfectly happy to use that and will definitely be using it. I also got another question that came from my using the colour wheel video that I did. And the question was, did I knit it up? Well, yes, I did knit it up, and it became socks, and it's sort of purple, green and yellow were the colours that I was using, predominantly with the purples. And because I got separation, you can see them in stripes. What you have to be really careful of any of these sort of colour blends that you're doing is that if you don't get good separation between your colours, and obviously there are ways of spinning to do that, then you're going to get mud. And yellow and purple, if you mix them together, you sort of get a sludgy grey. So you do have to be a little bit careful. But there you go. That's the result. Then this is what I showed you last week as my shrug, and it's nearly finished. Nearly finished. But because I sort of went down the rabbit hole of messing around with my website, I haven't got it completely finished, but it's nearly there. So that is the update and my thoughts on slow crafting. So thank you so much for watching. I'm going to leave it there. It's going to be a short and sweet one this week, and I will see you next week.